Most of our listeners are within the United States, but today's guest reminded us that there's a whole world out there.
Customer experience isn't solely U.S.-centric. It is global, and it varies by culture, and that really helped add to my formulation as a CX professional.
Customer experience from a global perspective on this episode of the CX Leader Podcast.
The CX Leader Podcast with Steve Walker is produced by Walker, a business consulting firm that helps our clients unlock the potential of their customer experiences by placing the customer at the heart of all their business decisions. You can find out more at walkerinfo.com.
Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Walker, Chairman and CEO of Walker Information and host of the CX Leader Podcast, and thank you for listening. Here on the CX Leader Podcast, we explore topics and themes to help leaders like you leverage all the benefits of customer experience and help your customers and prospects want to do more business with you. Chances are you're listening to this podcast in the United States, where most of our listeners live. But we love the fact that we have listeners in Australia, Canada, the UK, India, and many other countries. And every once in a while, we need to be reminded that customer experience is just as important within a global context. My guest today has over 35 years' experience in business, and in addition to being a sought-out speaker on customer experience, he is the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Customer Experience Professional Association, or as we like to call it, the CXPA. Bob Azman is the founder and CEO of Innovative CX Solutions, Inc., and we are delighted to have him join us for a conversation via Zoom. Bob, thank you for being on the CX Leader Podcast.
Oh, thank you, Steve, for that nice introduction, and thanks for inviting me to the podcast. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, well, the CXPA is coming up, and you as the leader, I think it's very timely that we have you here on our Luminaries series. Maybe just for the benefit of our listeners, Bob, if you could just give us a thumbnail sketch of your 35 years in the industry, kind of how you got into the customer experience space and what prepared you for where you're at today.
Absolutely, Steve. And what's interesting is I didn't wake up one day and decide that I wanted to be a customer experience professional, and spent the early part of my career really working in a lot of the different functions of business. So I started out in retail and was in buying and merchandising and store management, and then moved into financial services and got into direct marketing and catalog, advertising, product management. And so really worked my way through all the different functions of the operation, and honestly, didn't realize that was preparing me well for what I was going to become in terms of a customer experience professional. Getting that exposure to each part of the business really helped me in the later years of my career. Worked for very large companies, Thomson Reuters, Ceridian, Carlson companies. Then we called it customer service, and that evolved into customer experience. I spent a lot of my career in global operations and globalization of operations for those companies, and really was given an opportunity by the president of one of those companies to get into customer experience and to really turn our customer service operations into more of a customer-centric, customer-focused operation. He was really visionary in those terms then. We didn't call it customer experience, but he was really visionary then about where he wanted to take the organization. And he became my mentor, and I eventually ended up really finding my passion in customer experience, probably 10 or 15 years ago.
Well, that's a great introduction, and I got to unpack a couple of things here because they're themes that we've seen on the podcast over the past year and a half that we've been doing it. But one thing is that not too many people that ended up as CXPA professionals or customer experience professionals sought that out. Really, they actually were chosen for the task, and so that's kind of a common theme we see. I think it's interesting that you kind of came through retail into direct marketing, then into customer service, which to me is a very logical path. I've always been a fan of the retail employee. The retail experience, that really is the ultimate direct competition, and where a lot of customer experience, I think, has its roots in terms of differentiating around a great customer experience. And then also the fact that you had a visionary CEO that really wanted to drive this. That is just another theme that we see on the podcast is it's a heck of a lot easier to drive this kind of change in your organization if you've got that top-down C-level support.
Absolutely. And Steve, I might add too that when you reference the retail, one story in particular sticks with me even to this day. I was in college at the time, working in this retail operation. And, Steve, from time to time, college students may enjoy their evenings a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And I came into work one morning and was not having a particularly good day. And the retail store manager called me in the back room and she said, you're not looking too good today. And I said, yeah, I'm not feeling too well, probably partied a little bit too much. And she said, I can understand that, but the customer that walks in the door, that is probably the only opportunity they may have to interact with us. So I really don't care if you, lost your girlfriend last night or partied too much or whatever the case may be. Is we have one opportunity to satisfy our customers, and that's when they walk in that door. So if you're not able to do that, go home and rest and come back tomorrow. And I'll tell you what, that has stuck. See, I'm telling that story 40 years later, Steve, but that stuck with me because she was describing moments of truth. And she didn't call it that, but that's exactly what it was. And that really for me was the first time that I kind of began that journey around how do we constantly make sure that every moment of truth that we have with our customers is the best possible moment of truth that they can have with us.
Yeah, that's a really intimate story you tell there, Bob. I can appreciate it because I've had to play hurt a few times in my career as well. But, it obviously had an impression on you as a young person. If I hear that a young person has some retail experience or experience in a restaurant, I know that they have the skills to deal with customers.
Exactly.
And in essence, you can have a finance degree, you can have a marketing degree, but if you really can't deal with customers at the transactional level, that may be the most important business skill that people ever have. So you were lucky to learn that early in your career and has obviously stuck with you. Probably that one day off had as much impact on you as many other days on the job.
Exactly.
Well, that's a great story. Some of your other experiences, what other things have kind of struck you along the way as you've gone through this journey in customer experience?
Yes, I would probably focus a little bit on my global experience. And in the early 2000s, I had the opportunity to work with a company that was expanding globally, and actually built on that was subsequent companies that I worked with. And I think what globalization taught me is that, number one, customer experience isn't solely US centric. It is global and it varies by culture. There's considerations to be given to culture, to language, to content. And that really helped, I would say, add to my formulation as a CX professional to look beyond the US and to look at how we might take a company's CX experience that was defined in the US and how do we expand that globally and how do we vary that? And is there a base experience that we want our organization to have, and how does that vary internationally? And so for a couple of the companies that I worked for, we use the term think global, act local. So you kept that global experience in mind so that the brand was consistent globally and the organization's accountabilities and responsibilities were global, but yet we recognize the importance of the local culture and language and what that diversification meant for the company. So for me, that kind of second half of my career where I spent time working in global locations and bringing an organization to a global level really helped formulate how I approach customer experience as a profession and as a technique for how to improve an organization's performance.
That's fascinating, and it gives me an idea. I think we could do a series on globalization. We've had several guests that are managing a global program, and then I think back to our experience kind of being on the supplier side, Bob, and our historical sweet spot was the big complex enterprises that we were trying to roll up consistent metrics across a global footprint. So we too had a lot of experience in that. In that experience, did you get to do some travel?
Yes, I did. I think at one time my peak was 85% of my time was in an airplane or traveling to a global location. So it was great, but a lot of people would say to me, "Oh, you get to go to these fantastic locations," and I'd say, "Really? I fly in, I work all day long, all evening, and I go home. So I don't get to sightsee a whole lot in these locations. We just don't have that opportunity." But spent a lot of time in Manila, in Warsaw, um, in India. Spent quite a lot of time in India in my early part of my globalization career, so to speak, and then in South America, we had a number of locations with Carlson in South America, and I spent time there, and all fascinating cultures and people and opportunity there as an organization and as customer experience professionals.
Yeah, and even though there are cultural differences, I mean, at essence, the customer experience is something that is pretty universal. I mean, people are putting their money up for goods and services, and they want that to be a good experience. So even though there are differences in some respects, it's a very global concept. I think one of the things I noticed over my career in B2B, for example, a large enterprise customer that's being serviced globally by another organization, they want to have a consistent experience around the globe, overcoming whatever kind of circumstances there might be in the local market. So, and then be able to have that common experience no matter where they are in the world, right?
Absolutely. And in fact, when I worked for Carlson Vaughan Travel, we were the travel agency of record for some of the largest brands in the world.
That were global.
And they were global, right? And they were travelers that were, on the road 24 hours a day. So there was no such thing as a 8 to 5 US time zone. And that's exactly what those brands wanted for their travelers, was a consistent experience, regardless of what time of the day, where they were in the world, and what their issue was. They wanted a consistent experience. So the customers were asking for it, and certainly we had to respond to that and to have that consistent experience.
I recall one story, and it was probably in the early 2000s. We happened to launch a new web survey for a client on a Wednesday night. However, Thursday morning in the U.S. was Thanksgiving, and I just happened to check my Treo at the time, if you guys remember what a Treo is. And sure enough, on Thanksgiving morning, we had some issues with the survey, but it was just Thursday in the rest of the world. It wasn't Thanksgiving Thursday, and that was one of the early globalization lessons that stuck with me for sure.
Exactly, so true.
All right, Bob, we're going to have you back on for our globalization series, and we're going to come back and we're going to have some more fun with that.
Well, that'd be fun, Steve, because just on a side note, I teach global operations strategy at the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota. So I teach graduate students how to globalize their organizations. So that would be a lot of fun to join you on that, because it certainly is intriguing to me to see mid-level managers looking at how to operationalize their companies to be global, and it's certainly a hot topic right now.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit, because I know the CXPA conference is coming up, and as I mentioned in the intro, you are so kind to dedicate some of your time to the volunteer leadership position there. Tell me just a little bit about how you got involved in CXPA and how it is that you rose to be the chair.
So I wasn't one of the originals, so to speak, but I learned about CXPA, I think the second year it was formed, because I was really in the hunt for education, for colleagues, for content, because I was trying to advance a number of initiatives within the companies I was working at around customer experience. And as I saw the industry, if you will, evolving, that really that really gave me impetus to say, what are my colleagues doing? What are other people doing in CX? And so I sought out and found the CXPA and went to the U.S. Insights Exchange, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, is coming up, and really learned so much there and had such a great time networking with my colleagues and learning about their challenges, their opportunities, what were they doing, what was I not doing, that I really started to get involved in that in the association, and started volunteering with some of the many opportunities we have, and at some point was invited to be on the board or was nominated for the board. I don't recall exactly, and then worked my way on to the board and eventually to vice chair and to chairperson. And it's really for me about giving back, Steve, because I was able to gain so much from the association over the past 7 or 8 years that I really felt a need to, how do I give back, and how do I, as part of my makeup, provide that knowledge that I have back to the association. And so I was honored to move into the chairpersonship at the beginning of this year, and really enjoying the fact that we're in transformation and transition right now as an association in response to our members. We are an association that's by members for members, and so we have the opportunity to continue to improve in response to what members are looking for from us as an association.
Is the chair position, is it a one-year term or?
Yes, so we have a succession plan in place. The vice chair serves for a year and then succeeds to chairperson, and then the chairperson succeeds to immediate past chair. So it would be a 3-year commitment in leadership at the CXPA.
But you keep some continuity, and I think that's excellent governance for an industry association. But it just really shows the maturity of our industry that we have this resource today. And all of us are grateful for the people like you that are giving back and making the industry better for younger people. So we thank you for that very much. Tell us a little bit about the Insights Exchange coming up.
So our annual U.S. conference is May 15th and 16th in Salt Lake City. There'll be some workshops on May 14th that attendees can sign up for. And we've got some great content lined up, a combination of our partners, our sponsors, our content providers, so to speak, our practitioners. Really, it's a jam-packed couple of days where even if you're a beginner or an advanced CX professional, you can gain valuable information and updates for what's happening in the industry right now and where is it headed. So, a shameful plug is if you haven't registered yet, please do so, because I think you'll find it to be a valuable couple of days spent working, as I said, networking with professionals and learning the latest successes that many of our content providers will be providing to attendees.
You want to give the website or how people who are interested could sign up?
You bet. It's easy. Just go to CXPA.org, and you'll see the U.S. Insights Exchange registration information there. I should also add that we just finished up in March our European Insights Exchange, which was held in Dublin, Ireland. I had the opportunity to attend that exchange and again found a group of very passionate CX professionals that put the entire conference together and provided the content, and we had some very good feedback from that. So this is a logical next step is the U.S. Insights Exchange, and I hope your listeners will attend if given the opportunity.
My guest on the podcast this week is Bob Azman, who's the founder and CEO of Innovative CX Solutions, also the chairperson of the board of directors of CXPA. Bob, I'm going to ask you our hallmark question, which is take-home value. It's part of what we do here on the CX Leader podcast is we take the best ideas of every guest that we can and we try to spread them around. So if I'm a CX professional with not quite as much experience or knowledge as you out there, and I'm trying to improve my professional development, what is Bob's best tip or tips for me as I go about my craft?
That's a great question, Steve, and that's easy for me to answer because I try to practice what I preach. And so a little bit of background. What I hear a lot from CX professionals is, I don't have the backing of the CEO, or I can't get anywhere in my organization, or I can't seem to get any a momentum behind it. And what I tell professionals is, start. Do something small, do it within your own department, but whatever you do, start. Don't boil the ocean. Don't try to, solve world hunger as a CX professional, but start small, get something going, prove the concept, prove that you're able to have a success within a department that improves the customer experience. Celebrate those quick wins that you have, and then demonstrate that to the organization. In my opinion, if you're running into these barriers, there's nothing better than factual evidence that says, we tried it, it works, it's improving our customer experience, we're adding business value, we're improving the company's financial position. This is the way we have to go as an organization. It's a lot tougher for a senior executive to ignore that than saying, gee, this is something we think we ought to do. So my advice is start, get some momentum, and prove the fact that CX can contribute to the business performance in a very positive way.
I love that tip. One of my favorite comments is it's about progress, not perfection. And you can spend a lot of time moaning and groaning about the past, but you can also take that energy and transform it into something that's more forward looking. So I think that's great advice for the CX professional to just get in there and get something going and prove the case that way. Bob Azman's been my guest on the podcast this week, and he's the founder and CEO of Innovative CX Solutions, also the chairperson of the board for the CXPA. Bob, thank you for being a great guest on the podcast. You want to just give a little bit of contact information in case one of our listeners would like to follow up with you, LinkedIn or something like that?
You bet, and thanks for that. I've really appreciated being on the podcast, Steve. You can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm definitely there. You can also reach me, Bob, at innovativecx.com, and on Twitter at innovative_CX. Looking forward to interacting with my fellow professionals.
Great, and I'm sure everybody will say hello to you out in Salt Lake City here in just 3 weeks.
Please do.
And if you want to talk about anything else we discussed or how Walker might be able to help your business's customer experience, you can contact me at steve.walker@walkerinformation.com or call me here in the U.S., +1 317-843 8890. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, as I'd love to talk to you more. Be sure to subscribe to the CX Leader podcast. You can go to walkerinfo.com/podcasts and you'll find links to iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and also on our own YouTube channel as well. Simply go to walkerinfo.tv to listen. Thank you for listening to the CX Leader podcast, which is a production of Walker. We are a business consulting firm that can help you make customer experience your biggest competitive advantage. Find out more at walkerinfo.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.